What's the word, ladies and gentlemen? This is Andrew, and in today's episode of Is It Worth It, we'll be talking about Arty. He's often dismissed as a weaker Skyhammer, but I've actually found some really interesting uses for Arty that really made me appreciate him quite a bit more. Nevertheless, we'll be going through his stats, weapons, abilities, and playstyle, ultimately to determine if he's indeed worth your 30,000 credits or $7 USD. Now before we get too into it, please take note of the date of this video, for certain stats for his weapons and abilities may be changed by the time you guys are viewing this. So, starting us off, Arty is a fire support merc, much like Skyhammer, meaning he has 120 health and 400 movement speed. In fact, he's exactly like Skyhammer. His two abilities are the artillery strike and the standard ammo pack. Now the ammo pack is a very mobile ability, support ability that allows him to refill ammo to basically anyone, himself, friendlies, even enemies alike. It's important to note that if you land a direct hit on a friendly with an ammo pack, they receive a 15% cooldown reduction on any ability they have just used. Next up, we have the artillery strike, and while I don't know the exact damage it does to infantry, I can say it hits for about 3 waves of 137 damage to EVs. It's got 2 charges and each having a 20-second cooldown. While 2 charges usually isn't enough to bring down a full HP EV, with 3 charges you definitely can. The artillery strike will do some damage to open secondary objectives like generators, but we shall go more into that later. Arty's primaries are the Dryce, which is his default, the BR-16, and the Stark AR. None of these are fully automatic, so be prepared for a bit of a learning curve if you're used to the M4A1. His secondaries are the M9, the Selbstot, and the Calden. Since his default weapon is the Dryce, I'll be going into detailed stats of that weapon, but I'll leave a weapon stat page in the description for your viewing pleasure. The Dryce is a semi-auto rifle that will hit for 27 damage per shot to the body, doubling up to 54 damage to the head, and will shoot at a rate of fire of 300 RPM. The magazine size is a healthy 20 rounds, and its reload speed comes in at 2.2 seconds. Now the Dryce was recently buffed at the time of making this video, and it's given a better damage per bullet, and it now does 135 DPS. The accuracy also has been buffed quite considerably, and I would argue this weapon is one of my favorite weapons to use. Its hipfire has become way more consistent, and its iron sights are pretty decent for those ADS ranges. Overall, I find that the Dryce is currently in a great spot, and with good aim can easily contend in those close to medium ranges. Now for its default secondary, it is the wonderful M9, arguably the best pistol in the game. It comes with 15 damage per shot to the body, doubling up to 30 to the head at a rate of fire of 451 RPM. Its magazine size is quite large for a pistol, coming in at 15 rounds, and its reload speed is a quick 1.3 seconds. I find this pistol amazing, and I can often go with pretty decent streaks with just this pistol. Obviously not as strong as Arty's primaries, but it certainly can hold its own in a firefight. I definitely think it has a significant advantage over the other pistols just because of its giant magazine size of 15 rounds, which gives players, a bit more leeway with spamming their shots. Finally, we have his melee weapons, and Arty has a choice between the cricket bat, backhill combat knife, and the stiletto. Pretty standard, no katana here. His default is the backhill, which will hit for 40 damage, a swipe, or 80 damage on the lunge. And next up we have loadouts. And to me, a lot of Arty's loadouts are pretty decent. I'm gonna have to hand it to them. The devs over at Splash Damage, they did pretty good with Arty. It's not like a 3 Sparks loadout where one loadout is amazing. A lot of what goes into deciding what loadout you'd want depends on what primary you'd like. If I had to choose, I would vouch for loadouts with Explodidendron, as Arty's artillery strike has a relatively small AoE, so every bit of that added area really helps. With that said though, the loadouts that come to mind with this Explodidendron perk are the B81, the S82, and the S72. Again, it all depends on what you prefer on Arty as far as augments and sidearms, but I feel like there aren't really any awful choices you could do with Arty's loadouts. Personally, I stay away from the Calden. I'm sure you guys all know by now how I feel about the Calden. But hey, maybe you find that the Colden is worth using because it comes with that one augment that you really like. Again, this is a pretty tough question to answer as far as loadouts go, and you really can't go terribly wrong with any of Arty's loadouts. It all depends on your preference. As far as Arty's playstyle, well, he plays very similar to that of Kira and Skyhammer. He relies on clear access to the sky from the ground for his abilities to work. Now, perhaps by the time you are viewing this, splash damage would have given him an indoor ability of some sort, but at the time of making this video, a lot of people dislike Arty because they feel his job can be done better by Skyhammer or Kira. And in all honesty, if you are a newer player just starting off, I'd probably hold off on getting Arty, as your credits will probably be limited on spending and probably be put to better use in getting a engineer or medic. However, after playing a lot of Arty, I've come to the conclusion that there are actually a lot of nice little selling points for getting Arty, especially for the more experienced player who is bored of Skyhammer and the M4A1. First, I guess an interesting point is that I find Arty great in competitive matches where you're on defense on an EV map, namely like Chapel. Now I know the popular belief is that Skyhammer's airstrike is great at taking out the EV. However, I would argue that in competitive, where coordinated teams are constantly repairing, getting hit with a 60-second cooldown on a Skyhammer airstrike is pretty punishing. And don't get me wrong, one-shotting an EV with a single Merc is pretty fantastic, but when that EV comes right back up from an engineer-heavy team, that 60 seconds is a long time to wait. Now, on the other hand, you have Arty, who has the artillery strikes, which are way more spammy, and if you're working with a Stoker or Nader, spreading multiple short cooldown abilities across the team so you have a more even method of taking out the EV seems to me much more consistent and reliable. Of course, this is just based off of my opinion with competitive, but at the very least, I would argue Arty is definitely not completely overshadowed by Skyhammer in this regard. I also enjoy Arty's weapon selection. They're all burst or semi-auto weapons, but I find with good aim, they're oftentimes the most destructive weapons I've laid my hands on. However, that boils down to personal preference and how patient you are for really sitting down to practice with weapons that aren't fully automatic. Perhaps it's not something you're used to. Another interesting tactic with Arty is that you can take out a bunch of secondary objectives. If you take a look here, he's pretty much essential on attacking on Dome. In fact, I would argue that given how quickly his artillery strikes comes back and how quickly he can take down a generator on Dome, he's pretty much, a needed pick if you want to win easily on the attacking team on the first objective for this map. I know Kira can do the same thing, but I feel like I catch so many people off guard by surprise when I capitalize on the artillery strikes fast damage to the generator and quick cooldown. This works incredibly well on the ramp on Chapel to the MG Nest as well, because you can easily take out this secondary objective from halfway across the map. One thing to note though is that not all generators have the exact same HP. I know just off the top of my head, the ones on Train Yard seem to be quite a bit more tanky than the ones on Dome. Who knows, maybe by the time you guys are viewing this, the developers would have changed this, but as it stands currently, it takes about 3 bursts of the strike to bring down the generators on Train Yard. Now, I could go on forever about the different strategies you could do and positions you can take and all the different spots you could line up your shots with for the artillery strike. However, I feel like that wouldn't do Arty justice, because there's actually another guy who put up videos, or more specifically montages, of him using Arty and really utilizing those specific points on walls to pull off some really crazy artillery strikes that often net him multi-kills. I'm by no means an expert at these maneuvers, so I'll link a video showcasing one of his montages down in the description. Anyways guys, I hope that helps you guys determine if Arty is right for you. If you're a beginner player, I'd probably stay away from buying Arty as your first purchase, as Skyhammer will cover you for quite a while. Just go with an engineer like Bushwhacker or Proxy first. I feel like those mercs have a lot more to offer as far as diversifying your roster. So with all that said, let me know in the description what you think of Arty and if this video has been helpful, and until next time guys, I'll see you in the next one.